It's a pleasure to be called to speak on this debate on the gracious speech. And there's always a theme in debates on the Queen's speech, a list of bills that aren't present in the Queen's speech, and what should have been in there that wasn't, what people don't like about it, what they do like about it. And there's been a common theme for the benches opposite that's rather saddened me today, and that's that I don't think there's very much in this Queen's speech at all. Yet, as we just heard, there were 21 separate bills. There's quite a lot in there, and it takes me back to 2010, when I first became an MP, because this Queen's speech is all about why I wanted to come into politics in the first place. If I take myself back to 2010, and I look at my website, for example, I see that I would describe myself as the fresh-faced MP for Blackpool North and Cleveleys. No longer true. I look in the mirror now, the lines are slightly deeper, the eyes slightly more sunken, I'm the wrong side of 40. But one thing hasn't changed. That's my belief that I go into politics to stand up for the people who are directly under the state's care, who have no one to stand up for them. Yeah. That includes the patients in the hospitals with whom we opened the debate today. It includes the young people in care, waiting to be fostered or adopted, whom we've heard about today from the Prison Reform Trust, that they're overrepresented in the youth justice system, not just by a small amount, but by an absolutely massive amount. It's about the prisoners in our prisons who aren't being educated properly, who aren't being rehabilitated, which has a direct impact on the number of victims there will be if we don't reduce reoffending. So getting that right has to be the right thing too. Now we'll give way to the honourable gentleman.
Does he share my concerns of the radicalisation that takes place in prisons of those who are radicalised Islamic ways and those who are radicalised with the neo-Nazism as well? And is there a need for government to address that issue? Clearly in prison, people are going in with some sort of innocence in relation to religious belief and come out with a radical opinion. There has to be something done.
That point, he takes me into almost a 9-minute disquisition on how we balance the presence of faith in our prison system with the need to safeguard against radicalisation. And I agree with him broadly, but I don't want to go down that path, tempting as it may be, because I would also much rather focus on the fact that what brings all this together, this standing up for those people who have no one else to stand up for them, this idea of life chances, the theme behind the Queen's speech. Now, the Whip should listen carefully, because I hate the phrase life chances, but he shouldn't write it down in his little black book, because to my mind, what we are really talking about is social justice. I am like Ruth Davidson, I'm proud to say I'm a John Major conservative. I believe in equality of opportunity. I don't believe in equality of outcome because it can't be guaranteed. But I do believe, as part of social justice, that we have to take ownership of the consequences of our policies. We have to have some regard for the outcomes. And that can be very hard to justify when we're just looking at globalised national statistics. They don't tell the granular narrative detail of individual lives. We sat in this chamber on many occasions debating how we measure child poverty, what the best indicators are, what they mean, how we actually tackle child poverty. We can disagree constructively over what those indicators are and how we utilise them. But I believe we need to go down another level. A good example is an article I would urge you all to read. It was in the Atlantic Monthly in America last month about the proportion of Americans who, if landed with a bill for $400 unexpectedly, would not be able to meet that out of their own earnings. Shockingly, some 47% of Americans would not be able to meet that bill for $400 without recourse to either borrowing from others or payday lending. I shudder to think what the figure is in this country. I have no doubt some sociology department somewhere is preparing a research funding request as we speak to try and find out that information. But there's so much more that I think we need to burrow down into the detail of to get a true understanding of how to improve life chances. Just think about the connection between social isolation as a predictor of ill health. The number of lonely elderly people in my constituency who probably never speak to anyone day in, day out. And younger people too, with some very serious health conditions who may feel socially isolated. It is the key predictor of future ill health and therefore future demand on the health service. That has to be taken into account. Think also of children. I go to many primary schools, and in the more deprived parts of my constituency, I know there's a major problem with the number of children who are arriving at school age 4 who are untoileted, and the burden that places upon the staff in teaching and toilet training them, taking them away from the educational aspects of their job. The other wider issue for older children, perhaps, those who are eligible for free school meals. How many of them are not being fed properly in the school holidays? I know it's an issue that the lady for Horton and Washington West is deeply concerned about too. And whilst that's all much more difficult to measure, it tells a different dimension to the story of life chances than just these national, global figures that we all focus on as to whether child poverty is going up or down in any particular set of years. So I think we need to be much more creative, I think, in how we approach these issues. And I had hoped by talking for an extra 5 minutes that the Minister of State might have returned to his seat so he could hear what I was about to say about DCMS issues, because I know he has to write, or rather deliver a winding up summary of what's gone on today, and I was hoping to be helpful to him because he published an excellent culture white paper just before the Queen's speech, the first since Jelly-Lee's groundbreaking document in the 1960s. And the key part of the latest culture white paper was about broadening participation. And I hadn't really thought about it in those terms, but I got invited by one of my constituents, James Nash, to a concert by the National Youth Orchestra at the Liverpool Philharmonic a few weeks ago. James plays trumpet, he's grade 8, you have to be grade 8 to play in the National Youth Orchestra. And he, very proud of his participation, thoroughly enjoying it. He went to a local comprehensive. He's very musically talented. Fantastic opportunity for him. And yet that orchestra is a charity. It's supported by the Arts Council. Just the same, North and Cleveleys Brass Band, I had the pleasure of hearing them the Sunday before last. For the first time ever, they have won a regional division of the National Brass Band competition at the 4th tier, I gather it is, of brass bands. They're competing in Cheltenham in the national competition soon. That very brass band is looking for funds, and it's going to be going to the Arts Council, which supports brass bands now, thanks, I think, to the Minister's intervention. And that broadens the participation of so many young people who enter music through the local brass band. So there are so many ways that culture is broadening horizons. Sadly, in Lancashire, there's one way in which those horizons are narrowing very, very rapidly. That's a very sad decision by Lancashire County Council to close so many of our local libraries. Almost half of them in Lancashire are being shut. I am losing Cleveleys, which has a children's centre attached, and Thornton, which is just over the constituency boundary, but I feel I have a share in it with the member for Wyre and Preston North. And we all recognise that councils have to make savings. And what I find so frustrating about this situation is that when others have come up with solutions to help keep the libraries open and make the savings, that Lancashire County Council won't actually sit down and listen. Wyre Borough Council wants to convert all of Wyre's libraries into a community interest company, thereby foregoing many of the business rates and other associated costs that make them too expensive to run for the county council. By doing that, they can save the money the county council wants to save and keep every single library open. Yet, shockingly, the county council won't sit down and even talk about it. And the member for West Ham rightly said that she praises council to innovate. Can she have a word, please, with Lancashire to try to innovate? Because so many other councils of all stripes have rethought how they do library provision. Why can't Lancashire? Is it wanting to make a cheap political point? I so desperately hope not, because that would be an absolute tragedy. But I remember the Right Honourable Member for Lee back in 2008 taking a visionary step and calling a public inquiry because Wirral Metropolitan Borough Council had chosen to close so many of its libraries. And I attended that public inquiry. And I very much hope, I know he's not here, but I very much hope that the Minister of State might agree to meet with me to discuss whether Lancashire's plans would actually be enough to justify another public inquiry under the terms of the 1964 Public Libraries Act. Because they have an obligation in legislation to provide, and I quote, a comprehensive and fair service. And my concern is that what Lancashire are planning at the moment is neither fair, which I know is a subjective term, but it is certainly not comprehensive. And my constituents, who have been accustomed to going to Thornton and Cleveleys libraries, will now have to go further afield to Fleetwood and Poulton. shortly after a period when they have seen all their bus connections to areas like that desperately slashed also by the county council. So I find that doubly frustrating. So can I urge ministers on the front bench to at least arrange for me to have a conversation with the Minister of State at DCMS to discuss those very issues? Because on a wider point, I desperately try whenever I come here to believe that all of us are here for the right reasons. We all want to make things better for the people we represent in our constituencies. Some of us hide it better than others, perhaps, by our conduct in this place. Some are more bolshy, some are more rude, some catcall me from sedentary positions, some trundle away. But I always try and find that positivity in what the other person is saying. And I really urge everybody in this place to try to do that, because life's chances, whatever we think of the phrase, the issues it covers are surely why we came here today. And what I would urge you all to do is at least try to find the positives in what this government is trying to do. I know that they are the opposition and they have to scrutinise us, but open your hearts occasionally to find the good stuff that we're doing and help us to do it even better still, and not just criticise us as being anti-public sector, anti-everyone and anti-everything. Thank you very much.